Well, social media companies have seen a wave of investor buying. You've seen this all week long as they race towards public offerings. My next guest cautions against the optimism and warns that MySpace is the perfect example, saying, quote, "It was the belle of the ball until it wasn't." Leo Hindery is here with us. He's the managing director of Intermedia Partners, is the former CEO of the Yes Network, TCI Communications, AT&T Broadband, Liberty Media. The list goes on. Leo, great to see you again.
Nice to be back, Betty. Always a pleasure.
Let me start with Liberty Media and your former business partner,
sure.
John Malone, because certainly he made a lot of news a couple of weeks ago when he put this bid in for Barnes & Noble. Do you understand that kind of move?
John is a complex mind and not easy for those of us who are normal to understand. John is a brilliant visionary, I think is the best way to describe him. He tends to see in certain assets value that other people don't. Here's this very traditional sort of bricks and mortar company, Barnes & Noble, hundreds of stores, thousands of employees, and John looks at it as actually an electronic medium play. They've got this wonderful new asset called Nook. John, obviously, through his other holdings, has a tremendous amount of content. When you try to analyze a Liberty Media transaction, you got to sort of dig very deep. There's often a tax motivation.
I was going to say the tax part of it.
And some consolidation opportunities. John needs to convey to the market sort of an operating company orientation. If his assets are too passive, the market tends to downgrade them.
Right.
Barnes & Noble is, by everybody's definition, an operating asset. He'll turn it into something quite meaningful as part of the empire. Standing alone, probably it's not as valuable as it would be in his hands.
Because John's not a retailer, obviously. It's not for the retail portion. It's really for this platform, this electronic platform, right?
Well, you take your kids who you took to the twins who you took to the Kung Fu Panda movie.
Right.
They're going to live in a PDA handheld world, a world that John's very comfortable in. He's not comfortable in retail stores, and that won't be the emphasis going forward. It'll be a legitimate competitor to Amazon, to Sony, to others who try to come into the tablet
right, and obviously the iPad. Leo, I mean, you obviously spent your life valuing companies, and valuing assets. The Nook itself, I'm just curious, in your view, is it worth a large part of this valuation of $1 billion?
It better not be, because it's not worth very much. Again, it's in John's case, he's uniquely a visionary of the highest order. So he plays 2 or 3 steps ahead. I always said to John, when I had the privilege of working with him, that he was sort of a 3-dimensional chess player. and that's how you have to think of Liberty. It's always a step or 2 ahead. What John has tried to do and is trying to do, and I think succeeding quite ably, is he's trying to build sticky audiences, women and men and families that sort of engage with Liberty and stay with it.
Speaking about valuations and stickiness, you say that's the exact problem why there's too much frenzy over these social media websites, right? There's no stickiness there.
Well, there's none. And I was talking to a colleague of yours as we prepped for this show, Betty, and social media is such an all-encompassing phrase. It means too much to too many people. If it's built around an ethnicity, a gender, an orientation, a vocation, an avocation, that's a pretty sticky social media. If it's this sort of general audience that you chase, much like NBC, ABC, et cetera, chase general audiences, it's very risky. And so we saw something, MySpace was the belle of the ball, as you described, not that long ago, and it's an afterthought today. And so those social media sites that are just trying to capture willy-nilly in a facile sort of sense.
But would you put the LinkedIns and the Facebooks and the Twitters into those categories?
As they sit today, I sure would. I mean, what is the value of essentially an electronic Rolodex? I mean, that's what LinkedIn is. Now, they may do something with it, but there's a premise being constructed that somehow or another all of this comes together and a lot more advertising, a lot more spend comes into the marketplace. And half the fun of coming on this show with you over the years is it's a very fungible world, the media world. For every winner, there's a loser. And people forget that. This country is pretty static in its income. It's pretty static in its population. And so you can't premise, like we did in the telecom bubble, that suddenly overnight everything's bigger and more fulsome. It's just not going to be the case.
And to you, Leo, before we get to break, this is a bubble that you see in the social media world.
I do. I think it's a very fragile bubble. I think like so many of the bubbles out of the valley, it'll pop. And if you get in early and get out early, you're probably okay. But I don't see it as a phenomenon that the general investing public should take kindly to.
Obviously, we're talking about these, social media companies, and I want to kind of bridge that into our next topic, which is talking about the economy, about jobs. In your view, the fact that we've had so many of these startups, do they add anything to the economy in your view?
No, and I think where you've always been ahead of the pack, Betty, personally, is you've always tried to link the vitality, the vibrancy of the middle class with the media industry. They have to run hand in hand. And in these, and then compounding it is in these more developed Western economies, they're not growing. Population is pretty static. We're in the midst of a jobless recovery, as we'll probably talk about here in a bit. So unless you look at the middle class as being once again vibrant, as I said just before the break, for every winner there's a loser in media. For every winner in telecom, there typically is a loser. And premises are being made around the values of these companies as if everybody, all the ships, all the boats can rise at once.
And you don't believe that at all?
It just can't happen. It can't happen economically.
And the winners will be, just quickly, in the media industry?
Well, the winners will be those who have an audience that's devoted to them.
Okay.
In general, everything. You went to a wonderful movie last night with the twins. But that was a gamble that it was a good movie. Some of the movies showing up this weekend, this Memorial Day weekend, won't be very good. That's a tough business for the investing community. If you own audiences viscerally, sort of deep in their core, whether, as I said earlier, that's their gender, their ethnicity, their faith, what they do for livings, that at least is a relationship that has value.
Although I will say my kids knew that it would be a good movie because they were there was good marketing around it.
That's right.
So Leo, bring it back to jobs then. I mean, because you've always said that the jobs market is a lot worse than what the government's saying.
Well, we spend a lot of time on real unemployment, which is roughly twice as bad as official unemployment. And the tragedy, I think, is that judgments and decisions are being made as if we have roughly a 9% unemployment rate, which is a tragedy unto itself. But what if it's 18%? What if it's 28 million people, not 13 million people? And those numbers are very sobering. And they're sobering if you're 50 years old and looking at your future as being very challenged. They're very sobering if you're young and trying to find a career.
And yet with our debate on the budget, it's not going to make it any easier in the jobs market.
No, and the tragedy is we've become so partisan that we've turned the budget into such a partisan issue that we're forgetting that the purpose of a budget is to, again, restore that vibrant middle class. We're in a jobless recovery. We've had 12+ million women and men lose their jobs since December of '07 who haven't found reemployment. That's a sin. It's way past a tragedy.
All right, Leo, we're going to have to leave it here, but thank you so much. Always great to have you with us.